Welcome to the Reddit Chronicles. Today we will be reading from Malicious Compliance. Our first post is by Necron Boy. Retiring lawyer spills his beans. Kinda long with no TLDR. This all from memory, bases on the ramblings of a drunk retiring lawyer about 30 years ago. All mistakes are mine. So I started work in the 90s on the shop floor of a pipe-making factory, but made a few friends in the office. So one year at our end-of-year breakup party, I overheard a story from the corporate lawyer who was retiring on the same day. Someone asked what his most memorable case was. This guy was gray. Gray hair, gray skin, gray clothing, gray manners, nothing distinctive about him at all. In fact, at the annual company party known for drinking, this guy was always sober, but not that night. He was a contracts lawyer, never tried a case, just proofed contracts all day, as far as I know. He's probably dead by now along with most people in this story, but no company names as those entities live forever. So we made pipe, plastic pipe, water supply, sewer, electrical, and telecommunications duct. We were the second biggest in the market and would swap contracts with the biggest manufacturer as we both bid on supplying the big players in the markets. In our jurisdiction, we had a government communication department which got sold off and became Big Telco, along with deregulation of the sector. We supplied green ducting for telecommunications to Big Telco, lost the contract to the competition, gained it back, etc. Life went on. One day, a new international company entered our market and started undercutting Big Telco. Let's call them OK Telco. So as things go, we lost the Big Telco contract, but picked up the OK Telco contract, which was bigger, as they had to establish an entire network from scratch. Yay us. This is where Mr. Gray enters the story. He was a contracts lawyer, not a criminal law or other specialty, but contract. He gets a please attend meeting invite from Big Telco, along with a select few from our company. Probably about the upcoming renegotiating of contracts. When Mr. Gray walks into the room with his boss there sitting across the boardroom table are Mr. Big Shot and several $5 a word flesh-eating attack lawyers. They ambush them with an injunction about using this green, the standard telecommunications green, for OK Telco pipes, and are ready to take them for everything including the pension fund for daring to supply the competition. They had a strict contract on the table, which had to be signed then and there, or another $5 word flesh-eating attack lawyer standing by at the courthouse would have a judge sign an injunction against making any pipe at all until the case was settled. Probably an empty threat, but even a 2-week break in production could kill our company, while lawyers cleared it with a judge to let us make other types of pipe. Mr. Gray looked over the contract and told the boss to sign as they could tie us up in knots due to their huge size and budget, while the contract just made it clear that this green was the exclusive property of Big Telco and could only make it for Big Telco. We folded like a shirt and signed. Life went on with us making OK Telco that green pipe. A few months later, Mr. Gray went to a 20-year reunion from his law school. Guess who was there? Mr. Big Shit, telling everyone about how great a lawyer he is and how he can push around anyone due to how great he is, and definitely not due to his huge budget and army of $5 word flesh-eating attack lawyers. Mr. Gray is pissed. Mr. Gray bides his time and pores over the contract. A few years later, Big Telco has to have a name change due to how much bad press they have from shifty service and practices, and as a way to avoid debts under the old name, they change everything: storefronts, letterheads, everything. They are now New Old Telco. Contracts come and go. The other big pipe company gets the contract from New Old Telco to make pipe. Mr. Gray strikes. Other pipe company and New Old Telco get served with cease and desist orders about making and using green pipe. Big Shot lawyer is puzzled and angry that this has happened and calls Mr. Gray. Mr. Gray arranges a meeting and then hangs up on Big Shot mid-threat. Big Shot turns up with his $5 a word flesh-eating attack lawyers to see just Mr. Gray in the boardroom. No ambush, no backups, just him. Mr. Gray lets him vent his spleen about how they're going to gut the company, and Mr. Gray will never work in law again. Then Mr. Gray takes out a packet of papers and a highlighter, makes a few strokes, and pushes it to the closest $5 a word flesh-eating attack lawyer. They read what he had highlighted and screwed up their face. This was repeated as the papers were passed to the big shot lawyer. I'm no lawyer, and this was about 30 years ago, so I can only paraphrase what Mr. Gray said he had highlighted. Only our pipe company, in conjunction with Big Telco, can make and or use this green pipe, exclusively, with no substitutes, parent or child companies, successors, or blah blah blah. Since there were only 2 companies listed on the contract, they were the only 2 sets of people who could decide the fate of this green pipe. Big Shot said that they could claim ownership of the pipe color since they were in effect just a rebranded Big Telco. Mr. Gray pointed out that that admission would cause all their avoided debts to come home with interest, along with an admission of guilt in trying to pervert the course of justice. Big Shot then claimed that they inherited the ownership. Mr. Gray cut him off with the no child company clause. Big Shot went on for a while, being blocked by Mr. Gray at every turn, and at the end, even his $5 a word flesh-eating attack lawyers were jumping in to shut him down because he was exposing them to risks greater than any of them were willing to be a part of, especially since they had made the contract as airtight as they could to screw us. As they were leaving, Mr. Gray said 2 things. This was an unfair fight, all of you versus me. Next time bring more and smarter lawyers, and since we now effectively control the green, here's a document making the color public domain. We don't want to screw the other pipe company. It's not their fault they have idiots for customers. Our next post is by Assault Tank. Manager says to be off the clock by 1 p.m. I work in a barbecue restaurant as the pit master, so I run the smokers and handle all raw meat preparation. I have to get there by 5 or 6 a.m. depending on the day in order to have food ready to open the restaurant at 11. Well, the general manager decided she was spending too much on labor and needed to cut my hours. As such, she told me at around 2 p.m. on a Thursday the following, I need you to clock out by 1 p.m. every day, no matter what. I asked for it in writing and got it. So the next day, I went to the head chef when I got there that the general manager said I had to be out by 1 p.m. no matter what, and showed him the signed note. I set an alarm on my phone and got to work. I got through all the prep for the next day and was starting on the cleaning when my alarm went off. Now the pit area looked awful. The walls had some smoke stains that come off pretty easily with degreaser, but build up over time. The cooler floor had some blood on it that needed to be cleaned up before it spoiled and started smelling bad. My table had some seasoning left on it from where I seasoned the pork for the overnight load. The walls still had bits of skin, gristle, etc. stuck to them. The trash can was full. I told the head chef it was 1 p.m. and I had to go. He looked in the pit and said, "Yep, this is what I expected," but he let me clock out and go. This goes on for about a week, with the pit looking worse and worse each day. Then the district manager comes in on my day off. The head chef told me that the district manager immediately started on the general manager for the pit looking awful, and how the pit master needed to stay until the pit was clean, no matter what. So I got it in writing, and am now currently working to about 2:30 p.m. every day, doing the full cleaning I was doing before again. Not So Original writes in the comments below, if manager wasn't smart enough to cotton on, they probably thought, OP is so dumb, they need this written down, can't get good help. Our next post is by Demishkers. Don't want to pay me 7 minutes of overtime, okay, pay me an hour. I'm a nurse in a hospital I worked at early on, paid by tenths of an hour, as most do. They were cracking down on overtime. They were more than happy for us to clock out up to 7:36. Quit time was 7:30, and this meant we didn't get OT. But if we clocked out at 7:37, it was a problem. The unit I was on got a new director and became hell. More and more people quit. They couldn't replace them. We became dangerously short-staffed. We never took the 2 15-minute breaks, ever. We usually clocked out for a lunch because you'd get in trouble if you didn't, never mind you didn't have time. but we had to clock out. About half the time we would have to work during that mandatory lunch, unpaid. What am I going to do? Say, sorry you're dying, but my lunch is getting cold? Anyway, big OT crackdown came. Our manager told us if we had more than one late clock out, we'd get a verbal, not really verbal because it's documented in file. Another late clock out, a written. Then who knows? Now, I rarely clocked out late because I worked my tail off, but about once every other week, I may clock out 0.1 to 0.2 hours late, but that's because I tried really hard to get out on time. I didn't even want the OT, I wanted to go home. About everyone got a verbal within 2 weeks. She then came back and said, if you clock out 0.1 to 0.4 hours late, then you would get the verbal. However, if it was greater than 0.5 hours late, then they knew something bad happened and would let it go. So all of us that did our best to get out within 0.1 minute late on bad days, no longer. We took our sweet time and we were all clocking out 45 to 60 minutes late. Our documentation was never so perfect. Suddenly they dropped the whole BS. Thank you for listening to the Reddit Chronicles. Follow for more content.